Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 10-Minute Tuesday. This is Amy Keenan, Director of Channel Sales here at Paramount Workplace, and we're excited to have you here today.
And thanks, everyone. This is Foy Maynor. I'm the VP of Sales with Paramount, and I'll be your host for today's presentation. And we're also glad to welcome Janet Martin, who is a Senior Account Executive with Paramount and has experience with sports teams and franchises from a consulting and implementation, as well as a sales and marketing standpoint.
Good afternoon, everyone.
All right, everybody. So what we're going to talk about today on this 10-Minute Tuesday is a procurement and expense game plan for professional sports. So football manufacturer Wilson provides Super Bowls teams with 108 balls, 54 for practice and 54 for the game. So while Wilson likely donates these balls to the teams as a promotional activity, professional sports teams have many expenses, and effectively and efficiently managing those expenses and the overall procurement cycle can make the difference between winning and losing off the field. So we've identified 5 of the procurement and expense challenges professional expenses teams and franchises face, and we'll take a look at how a spend management solution can help even the score. So one of the first things that we can look at is that it takes a team of vendors to provide a professional sports team with what it needs. In addition to all of the gear and equipment required to maintain that professional sports team, there are numerous services involved in keeping the team and their venues healthy and in good condition. While many organizations have effective methods for tracking spending on stuff, only a few have a robust software solution for tracking and managing spending on services. As a result, service spending can end up happening outside the organization's prescribed workflow and approval process. And one of the most important keys to being able to manage that spend is vendor contracts. So vendor contracts allow you to track spending with particular vendors, as well as control that spending by negotiating with those vendors what it is that you're going to pay for the goods or services that you need. And then as they flow through the process, you're going to be able to link those requisitions to the contract and then have the tracking through approvals, as well as once the purchase order is created, all the way through receiving and invoice matching. And Janet, can you talk a little bit about your experience with vendor contracts in sports organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is kind of a huge plus with our sports industry clients. It actually allows you to set those simple budgets and then be able to view all of those transactions that are encumbered throughout the process, meaning in entry, in approval, and when it becomes that purchase order. That way, you know, when you get kind of to the end of the contract, you have some really nice reports. You can kind of see where you stand. And that really, you know, at that point, there's no surprises at the end of the contract, whether you have money left over that you probably maybe should have spent or that you're going over that budget. So that actually is huge within this industry to track against goods and services.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. And we'll talk more about approvals here in a few minutes, but if you're using a vendor contract, it can also be an important part of the approval process, because if you know that your users are buying from managed spend, then you can cut down maybe on the potential approvals that are needed, which obviously shortens that process and makes it more efficient. One of the other areas is travel expenses. So you've got travel expenses for players, coaches, and support staff, and that represents a significant outlay for the professional sports team. Keeping travel expenses in line within your budget is key. You can configure the system to honor the budget limits you've established in your ERP system and ensure that spending doesn't get out of bounds. You can also gain better visibility into your travel spend, providing the insight and metrics you can use to negotiate better travel-related contracts to save the organization money and hassle. And Janet, if you could talk a little bit about some of the key functionality and features that you've seen that are important on the expenses, that would be great.
Yeah, so, you know, I think the mobile portion of this is also huge. Everybody kind of seems to be on the go with the OCR capability and scanning those receipts and uploading them and automatically submitting those for approvals, as well as it's pretty intuitive with the accounting department, being able to kind of see everything and be able to go back and either using an expense type to kind of look at, what's been, accumulated within a certain category, whether it be airfare, mileage reimbursement, or any of those are kind of huge within that space, especially because not everybody has time to really be sitting at a computer, tracking their expenses and kind of stapling those receipts to some sort of spreadsheet.
Exactly. And just like anything else that's a part of the spend management process, it's all about making it easy for any of the users that are entering the transactions or approving the transactions so that they can act on those anytime, anywhere, but at the same time being able to gather the necessary information that you need to be a part of that transaction so that it makes the approvals easier, as well as the audits and visibility into those transactions after they've gone through. So professional sports teams obviously buy a ton of gear, jerseys, helmets, and uniforms, and much of it's the same thing over and over again. So you could use a shopping list as an example for regularly requested items, and that's essentially a favorites list that can be set up by user, by department, or made available system-wide. You can also duplicate previous requisitions, and that saves you time from having to rekey or re-enter the information every single time that you need the same thing over and over again. Certainly, whether you use a shopping list or whether you duplicate previous requisitions, you also have the ability to edit and add to the new requisition as needed. But again, it's designed to allow you to get that information in quickly. And the shopping list and the duplication are simple, powerful features that make smart use of the staff's time. They reduce the data entry errors and keep the procurement engine performing at its peak. And Janet, again, if you can have any highlights for any additional functionality here that may be important, let us know.
Yeah, so absolutely. I think as an end user, kind of, watching my requisition go through their process, knowing the detail, who it's waiting on for approval, and being able to track that is very important, up to the point of even when it goes to purchasing, and purchasing emails that PO to the vendor automatically from Workplace. That end user can get an email notification along with the PO. Maybe they're responsible to get the PO to the vendor. We can certainly do that as well. But I think in the sports industry, because we've got our major and minor leagues, there's different types of logos and different applications they use. Marketing is spending money as well. So it's kind of nice to have the attachments automatically go with the purchase order to the vendor, especially for any of those logos or anything like that. So again, kind of in the sports industry, pretty important to make sure, the vendors are there in the system, they're available, right logos are going with purchase orders, and we're keeping that entry user, that requisitioner, up to date as it goes through the process.
Exactly. And one of those things that Janet just mentioned was having, many different locations or many different sites. So certainly if you think about a, baseball professional major league team, they're going to have those minor league teams that are associated with them at the different levels. And that's certainly an example of how you'd be able to consolidate purchasing, across the entire organization. And that way you're able to get visibility for all of your purchases. You're able to take advantage of volume buying discounts that you may have. And then with the integration to your back office financial or ERP system, you're able to get seamless integration and exposure to all of that information without having to rekey. So get all your details and all of your information in one place. And one of the key points here on the slide is talking about inventory. Inventory is not something that you always think of as a part of a procurement or spend management solution, but we certainly find it important from our side in many different examples when organizations have consumable inventory. And Janet, anything to add to that from your experience?
No, in actually inventory, when not using inventory in the ERP, Workplace does have a full inventory management solution. So I can release and transfer goods in between, locations. I can look to see if another location might have an overage of what I'm looking for. That certainly saves some money by not having to purchase unnecessary inventory. As an approver, I can too, on the spot when I'm in and I'm getting ready to approve, I can look to see, well, how many of these do we have? How many do we have at each location, as well as the buyer. And again, it's all about not having to purchase unnecessary inventory when I have it possibly sitting somewhere else.
All right. Yeah, exactly. Take advantage of what you've already purchased, be able to use all of that inventory up no matter what that may be. And then certainly, as you said, Janet, it's quicker a lot of times to be able to pull something or release something from inventory than having to buy it and have it shipped from the vendor. And last slide here is the approval process. So when you've got a busy staff operating out of multiple locations, obtaining the proper approvals is often a challenge for professional sports teams. When approvals become too burdensome, employees often seek ways to bypass those approvals, resulting in unmanaged spend and costly budget overruns. So using a procurement management solution can simplify and streamline the approval process while ensuring your organization's business rules are followed. With unlimited approval rules and unlimited approval paths, you can configure those rules to match the way that you do business. Base them on pretty much any data element, whether that be the vendor, the department, the league, the amount, the expense type, and the software will honor those rules as a part of the approval routing process. And you can allow your requisitions to be initiated and approved on mobile devices, as Janet mentioned earlier, or also via email for maximum flexibility and usability. Again, the idea is to have the approval processes there when you need them to be able to manage by exception, but also make it very easy for the approvals to occur so that people don't look for ways to bypass the system. And Janet, that's our kind of last slide here. So if you want to add to that and then close out with anything, that'd be great. And then we'll see if there's any questions.
Absolutely. So as Foy said, the approval paths are unlimited. So being in the implementation consultant role for many years here at Paramount, I really haven't come across anything that we could not route off of. If there's a field for it, if there's a need for it, generally we find a way to route that to the appropriate person. We also have, which is really important, we have line level approval, meaning that when I'm putting in the requisition at that time, I don't have to think about who it's going to go to for approval because each line can be independently sent to a particular approver. So that's really important. We also have ad hoc approval. I'm an approver. I'm looking at something. Maybe I want Foy to, have a second set of eyes on it. I can certainly, on the fly, ad hoc it over to Foy. Foy takes a look at it. He'll approve or disapprove, and then it will pick up back into the routing rule path that it was originally designed for. As far as closing, I will say I've worked with many teams. They are one of the greatest clients. They are all, they're in a fun, they're in a creative atmosphere, really pleasant to work with. So absolutely a fun client. I think with Workplace, having that everything in one spot, you don't really have to give the users access to the ERP systems. They don't have to be an ERP licensed user. Workplace is independent. Therefore, they're just going to have the security to Workplace, don't have to worry about what security that they have in the ERP system. Thus, maybe that's more information than accounting's willing to share. You know what? It's a win-win for all. We know this industry doesn't like coming up short, and our product is, very highly used within the industry, and we have great references available for it. And thank you for everyone for attending today. It's our pleasure to kind of bring this to the forefront, and I will turn it over to Foy in case anyone has any questions.
All right, Jan, thank you very much, and thanks for joining us this week. We really appreciate you taking some time to sit in and give some frontline expertise as far as the professional sports organizations. So we do have some time for Q&A here, although we've certainly gone over our 10 minutes like we normally do. And I've got one question. The one question I have is that in a previous 10-Minute Tuesday, you talked about punch-out. Is that also applicable with professional sports organizations? And the answer to that is yes. I mean, punch-out is something that's always applicable to any procurement or spend management solution. And for those of you who don't know what punch out is, again, there's a 10-minute Tuesday that you can view on that, but real simple, it's a catalog maintained by the vendor that you can shop and make a part of the requisition process. The benefit is that the vendor maintains the catalogs for you as their customer, and then you're able to shop those catalogs and then route the requisition for approval before the PO is completed. Certainly we see punch out be office supplies and healthcare, predominantly for a lot of the different vendors, but certainly with some of the services that are out there, punch out can and does apply to anybody. And if you want some more details about that or have any other questions, please reach out to Amy or myself, and we'll be glad to answer those. That's the only question I have here during our live event, but if you're watching this recorded, please certainly use one of the email addresses or our website to contact us, and we'll be glad to assist you. And thank you for sitting in for the 15 minutes today. We really appreciate it and look forward to seeing you next time. Amy, if you just want to, when you get a chance, just wrap that